Hello. Today we're making a mustard crusted pork loin, and we're going to serve that with an apple cabbage slaw. So you want to get your pork loin out. It can be a pork tenderloin. This happens to be the actual loin, not the tenderloin. The tenderloin would be smaller and tapered at the end. This is a pork loin. It's actually a segment of the pork loin. It's about 1.5 pounds. You want to pat that dry, and you want to season it on both sides rather generously with salt and pepper. So I'm going to start with my pepper, and I'm using kosher salt today. It has the crystals cling better, so we're putting some of that. And now I'm using my tongs to flip it over. And you'll notice I'm doing this on a foil-lined sheet pan. And the reason it's foil-lined is, frankly, for easy cleanup. So we're going to get that seasoned. Pork is, especially the loin, it does not have a lot of fat in it. You know, we hear about bacon, and bacon is all about the fat. But the loin is a very lean meat. So we're going to, you can see that just by looking at the meat itself, okay? Yes, there's a piece of fat here on the outside. That's going to give us some flavor, but you have to watch not to overcook a piece like this. So the next thing we're going to do is get our crust ready. So I'm just going to move this off to the side. So we're going to do that in just a moment. We'll get our bowl, have our whisk, and we're going to get, this is whole grain Dijon mustard. And you can use a regular Dijon mustard, but this adds texture. So if you don't like the texture, you don't have to use that. We're going to get about 1/4 cup out of that. This doesn't fit in there, so let's get a smaller spoon. I'm just using a measuring spoon. And I say 1/4 cup. It doesn't matter if it's a little bit more, but this will give you an idea. So I'm just putting that into my cup to measure it out to make sure I actually have enough. You can see the seeds are whole on this grain. Like I said, you can use a regular Dijon mustard if you prefer. I happen to like how this turns out because it gives you an added texture. Okay? Mustard seeds, kind of expensive on their own. And as with anything, I don't want to waste any. So we've got our mustard. Let's close that off. And put that in. Okay. It's all out. And then we need about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. You can use a neutral oil. I happen to like olive oil, so you can use vegetable oil, you can use canola oil. Olive oil gives it a little bit of a fruitiness, so I like to use that. And we're just going to use our whisk to combine. You can see that right there. Doesn't take much. And in doing this, I'm also breaking some of the pieces of the seed, so you can see it's getting a little creamy because I'm emulsifying a little bit here as well. And that's what we want. So you see how that's it's kind of creamy now? That's all we need there. All right, so here's where the fun part comes in. We're going to take our mustard. I'm going to use the spoon that I already have to just scoop it out. And because I'm trying to keep my hands clean, I'm going to use the back part of my tongs to spread it out. You can use your hands if you'd like. It's nothing like getting right in there with your food. But I'm just trying to keep my hands clean right now. So you just want to get an even layer. And we're going to let this sit for about 15 to 20 minutes just so that it'll come to room temperature. And in the meantime, we've got our oven turned up to 400 degrees. And we're going to preheat that oven so it's nice and hot when we're ready to go. So you want to get all of that out of there. And like I said, I'm using the back of my tongs so I can get a nice even coat. And I'm keeping my hands clean. And since I'm using the tongs already, they were already dirty. Not dirtying anything else. Okay, so this is going to sit off on the side for like about 20 minutes to come to room temperature. And we do that so that it'll cook evenly when it gets in the oven, so it's not super cold in the middle. I'm going to put that off to the side while we finish doing the rest of our prep. Okay, so now we're going to work on getting our slaw together. I've already sliced up, shredded my green cabbage, which is right here. You can see that was about just under a half of that cabbage. And I'll show you how I'm going to do the red cabbage. And you'll notice I changed out my cutting board, and I did that specifically because the red cabbage is going to leave my fingers a bit red. So what I do is right down the middle, make sure you have a good knife. This is nice and tough. Look at how beautiful that is inside. Now, everything is edible here, but this core is really tough. We're going to cut that out, and I'm going to use this half. And the way that I do it is I'm going to angle my knife in, and then angle it again. So I've made a V cut, and it comes right out. Okay, so this can go in the compost, feed the chickens or something. I'm going to cut this in half. Remember, flat side down. Cut that in half. And now using your knife as your guide, you're going to use your knuckles as your guide. You're going to slice this as thin as possible. And ultimately, we want 4 cups of shredded cabbage. You'll see I'm going to turn it down here where it's shorter and as thin as I possibly can. This is where having a good sharp knife makes all the difference. Okay, so we've got shredded cabbage and we've got 4 cups. So we get that all together, clean up our cutting board. And our next step is to grate our apple. So I've got 1 apple. I'm going to just simply grate it right into my slaw. You'll notice I did not actually put any of the I'll open that up. I didn't take the peel off, and I did that on purpose. The apple is going to give us sweetness. So we're just going to grate the rest of that in, the whole apple, and then we're going to cook it off. Okay, so now it's time to put the slaw all together. We're going to take about 3 tablespoons of butter and put that in our pan. We're going to take about a tablespoon of white wine vinegar and put that in our pan. And by doing this, we're going to create the slaw itself. We're basically making a dressing for it. And in order to help the apple that's in our slaw with the sweetness, we're going to add brown sugar. So we've got, I'd say, about a tablespoon, heaping We're going to put that in as well. So let's take a look at that and get that going. All right, so we want this to completely melt. We want the sugar to be completely dissolved. It won't take long for that to happen, but you can see that happening already here. All I did was put the sugar in. So we're just going to redistribute some of things here and let that cook down. We have our heat on medium, and you can see it's already bubbling. This is always going to be the hottest part of your pan. Help that along a little bit here. Just want to get that sugar melted, get our butter melted. And then all we're going to do is add in our cabbage until it wilts just a little bit. And it'll keep cooking, so we don't need to keep it in here very long. But we want this not to be grainy. We're going to have that texture from our pork, remember, with the grainy mustard. So this just needs to dissolve. It's almost there. Remember, we've got 4 cups of cabbage going in here and a whole apple. Let's get this moved up. Yeah, I think we're there. All right, so we're going to add all of this in. And we just want it to wilt a little bit. We're going to stir that around. To incorporate everything, to get that vinegar and sugar solution here on everything. Because it's cabbage and we've shredded it, this won't take long at all. But look at how pretty that becomes when you mix all these colors together. The volume of this will almost half, depending on how long you leave it on the heat. Let's get some of this stirred in. You can make half of the recipe if you'd like, if you don't like this too much, but this is our vegetable. So I made a lot because I actually like how this all comes together. And you'll notice the red cabbage is going to bleed a little bit, some of its color as it heats up. So this is all going to take on a bit of a pinkish hue, which is fine. But if you don't like that, it's not aesthetically pleasing for you, just leave the red cabbage out. Just use all green cabbage. It'll still be pretty. You could also use a green apple. I used a Gala apple, which is sweet, but you can use a Honeycrisp apple. You can use a Granny Smith apple, but that's going to add a little more sourness than anything else. But you can already see that the volume of this has gone down. I think we're almost there. Remember, because it's going to keep cooking, I'm going to turn it off before it's like at its final stage. And it's just wilting. So we're going to have the texture of the cabbage to counteract the texture of the meat, which is going to be really delicious. Okay, let's check on our pork loin. Ooh, nice and hot. Goodness. All right, that's been cooking at 400 degrees for the last 15 minutes. We're going to take a thermometer read. We need this to get up to 145. It's at 112. So I'm going to continue cooking. Now I'm dropping the temperature to 350, and we're going to cook it for another 10 or 15 minutes tops. Let's see where we are temperature wise. It's been 10 minutes. Oh, we're over. A little bit over, but that's okay. We're going to let this rest now for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to go ahead and slice it. Now that we've let our pork rest. We're gonna put it on our cutting board. And you wanna let it rest for at least 10 minutes. In the meantime, we're gonna do a quick cleanup of our sheet pan. Isn't that lovely? No work. No work for cleanup. You gotta love that. So when you're slicing your pork, you can use a chef's knife for this. I'm using a serrated knife, and I'm going to cut against the grain. Cutting against the grain makes it easier for one to chew. You'll notice I'm not using a fork to pierce the meat. The more holes it has in it, the more opportunity for the juices to escape. So I'm using my tongs, and these tongs literally just so that it doesn't move around. I'm not squeezing, I'm just holding it slightly. So I'm gonna slice the meat very thinly. And you can see, well, I'll turn it around so you can see it. All right, so no juice is coming out because it's well rested. We're just going to cut a few more pieces. We'll probably put, like, up to 4 ounces per person. So this will serve at least 4 people the way I'm serving it. Okay, so let's move that off to the side. And we'll get our plate. And we're going to put our slaw on here. Nice mound of slaw. I'm also going to put a few potatoes. I roasted some potatoes with harissa. I sauteed them in a little bit of olive oil. I tossed them with some olive oil, harissa, and that's it. I didn't even actually add salt because of the harissa adds all the flavor that we need. And now I'm going to take my pork and, again, trying not to use my hands, fan out a few pieces of pork. And there you go. We've got mustard crusted pork loin with cabbage and apple slaw, and in this case, harissa potatoes. You don't need the potatoes for this. I just happen to want one more thing on the plate. I hope you enjoy.